No one in that valley understood why her chimney barely smoked. On nights when the wind howled across the Montana plains and every other home burned through piles of wood just to survive, her barn stood quiet, almost still. And beneath it, something unseen was keeping her children alive. If you've ever wondered how far a person will go to protect their family, stay with this story. Because what Emma Herrian built was not just unusual. It was something no one believed would work. Montana Territory, winter closing in, 1887. From the frozen road, Emma's homestead looked no different from the others scattered across the valley. A small log cabin, a tired barn leaning slightly under its own weight, smoke drifting weakly into the pale sky. Nothing about it suggested survival. And yet, every morning before sunrise, Emma woke to the same harsh truth. The cold was winning. The air inside the cabin bit just as sharply as the air outside. Ice formed along the walls. Frost clung to the nails. Even breathing felt like work. Her daughters slept close together, wrapped in every blanket she owned. Still, their small bodies trembled through the night. 7-year-old Sarah had begun to cough. Not a simple cough, but the kind that stayed, the kind that settled deep in the chest and refused to leave. The kind frontier mothers feared more than hunger. Emma would lie awake beside the dying fire, staring into the darkness, listening to that sound, and thinking one quiet, terrifying thought. This winter might take them. She tried everything she knew. More wood in the fire, more blankets, sealing every crack in the cabin walls. But nothing changed the truth. Heat rose and disappeared. The warmth from the hearth never reached the sleeping room. The floor stayed cold as ice. By morning, the fire would die low, and the cabin would feel no different than the frozen land outside. Each day, the woodpile shrank faster than it should have. Each night, Emma woke again and again to feed the fire. She was not just fighting the cold. She was losing to it. Other families struggled too, but they had help. Husbands to cut wood. Extra hands to repair, to carry, to endure. Emma had only her own strength, and 2 children, watching her for answers she did not yet have. And slowly, quietly, something began to change inside her. Not fear, not panic. Something else. A question. What if the problem wasn't the cold? What if the problem was where they were sleeping? The answer came on a morning so ordinary she almost missed it. She stepped into the barn to milk the cow, and sobbed. The air inside felt different. Still cold, yes, but not cruel. Not biting. The animals shifted softly in their stalls. Their breath rose in pale clouds. The dirt beneath her boots held a steady firmness, not the sharp chill of frozen wood. She stood there longer than she needed to, feeling it. Not warm, but warmer. And for the first time in weeks, her mind did not feel trapped. It felt open. Her eyes moved slowly across the barn. The walls, the roof, the animals, the ground. And then, without speaking, she understood something simple and powerful. The animals were sleeping better than her children. That thought stayed with her. It followed her through the day, through the cold evening, through another restless night. By morning, it had become something else. A decision. When the ground softened enough to break in early spring, Emma did not ask for help. She did not explain her plan. She did not seek approval. She picked up a shovel and began digging beneath the barn. At first light, before anyone else in the valley stirred, she worked. One shovel at a time. Clay, stone, frozen earth. Her hands blistered, her back ached. Some mornings she could barely stand straight. But she kept going, because she was no longer guessing. She was following something she had felt with her own body. The difference between freezing and not freezing. The hole grew deeper, day by day, foot by foot. Neighbors passed by without noticing. From the outside, nothing looked different. But beneath the barn, something quiet and determined was taking shape. Emma was not building a home. She was building a chance. 8 feet down, she stopped. The earth grew harder there, solid, steady. Enough. She widened the space carefully. Not large, not grand, just enough for 3 people to sleep without suffering. Stone by stone, she lined the walls. Heavy limestone carried from the creek, each piece shaped by hand, each one placed with care. The work was slow, but Emma was not in a hurry. She was thinking about winter, because winter would return. It always did. And when it came again, she would not be waiting for it in that freezing cabin. Not this time. Above her the barn stood, as it always had. Quiet, ordinary, unnoticed. But beneath its floor, Emma Herrian was building something no one in that valley had ever imagined. And when the next winter came, they would all be watching, even if they did not yet know it. By the time the first snow touched the valley again, Emma's work was finished. From the outside, nothing had changed. The barn still leaned the same way. The wind still pushed loose snow against its walls. The same narrow road passed by without a second glance. But beneath those weathered boards, a quiet secret waited. And Emma was ready to test it. The first night they slept below the barn, her daughters did not speak much. Rebecca climbed down the ladder slowly, her small lantern casting soft light across the stone walls. Sarah followed close behind, wrapped tight in a shawl, her cough still lingering but softer now. The room was simple. Low ceiling, rough stone, packed earth beneath their feet. A small iron stove sat in one corner, already warm, its soft glow filling the space with a steady heat that did not flicker or fight like the cabin fire. Emma closed the trapdoor above them. The sound of the wind disappeared. Just like that. No howling. No sharp drafts. Only a quiet, heavy stillness. Rebecca looked around, uncertain. "Are we hiding?" she asked. Emma shook her head gently. "No, we're staying warm." That night, for the first time in months, Emma slept without waking. No rushing to feed the fire. No checking blankets. No listening for that deep, painful cough. The heat stayed. Not strong, not overwhelming, but steady. Like the earth itself was holding it for them. If you've ever spent a winter night worrying about someone you love, you know what that kind of rest means. It is not comfort. It is relief. Above them, the barn animals shifted through the night. Their quiet movements, their breath, their presence. All of it added something unseen. Something Emma had trusted, but could not fully prove until now. And slowly, hour by hour, the small room stayed warm. Word did not spread right away. Emma did not tell anyone. She had no interest in explaining herself. Each morning she climbed back into the barn, fed the animals, carried on as always. Each night she disappeared below again. The routine became simple, and the results undeniable. By December, Rebecca let something slip. Just a small thing. A quiet mention to another girl at the settlement store. And like all things in a small valley, that was enough. At first, the reactions were soft. Confused looks, raised brows, people repeating the idea out loud as if saying it might make sense. "She sleeps under the barn? With the animals above her? That cannot be right." Then came the judgment. Not loud, but certain. Mrs. Calhoun, new to the territory, shook her head firmly. "It is not proper," she said. "No decent person lives like that." Another woman said it more bluntly. "She has given up." The word spread faster than the truth ever could. The men were quieter, but not kinder. They spoke of danger, of collapse, of poor thinking. A carpenter passing through the valley stopped at Emma's place one afternoon. He saw the changes. He asked to look. Emma let him. He stood in the underground room, studying the beams above, the stone around him, the stove in the corner. He did not stay long. When he climbed back up, he gave her a careful look. "Ma'am," he said, "this kind of thing can fail in ways you cannot fix." Emma met his eyes, calm and steady. "It has not failed yet." The man nodded, but his doubt stayed with him as he rode away. That was the pattern. No one wished her harm, but no one believed in what she had done. Different meant wrong, and Emma had done something very different. She did not argue. She did not defend. She simply kept living the way that worked. And something began to change, quietly. Her daughter stopped coughing. Not all at once, but slowly, day by day. Sarah's chest eased. Her sleep grew deeper. Her small body, once tight with cold, finally relaxed. Emma noticed. She said nothing, but she noticed everything. Her woodpile lasted longer, far longer than it should have. While others cut and carried and burned through their supply, Emma used less and stayed warmer. Again, she said nothing. Because the truth did not need her voice. It only needed time. Then January came, and with it, a storm that would change everything. The wind arrived first. Sharp, relentless. It swept across the valley with a force that bent trees and buried fences. Then came the cold. Not the kind people complained about. The kind that took things. The kind that made every mistake cost something real. Within hours, the valley disappeared. Snow moved sideways through the air. Visibility dropped to nothing. Even stepping outside became dangerous. Cabins shook under the pressure of the wind. Doors froze. Chimneys struggled. And inside those homes, fear began to grow. Fires had to be fed constantly. Every hour. Sometimes more. Wood vanished faster than anyone had planned for. People burned what they could find. Furniture. Old boards. Anything that would catch flame. Still, it was not enough. Smoke filled rooms when chimneys failed. Windows cracked open to survive the air and let the cold rush in. Blankets piled higher. Children pressed closer. But the warmth never held. Across the valley, the same story repeated. People fighting, struggling, enduring, and losing ground with every passing hour. Inside Emma's barn, nothing looked unusual. The wind howled outside. The snow built higher against the walls. But beneath it all, Emma moved quietly down the ladder, closed the trap door, and lit 6 pieces of wood. The room warmed. Slowly, steadily, just as it had before. Her daughters sat close together, reading by soft light. Their breaths calm, their hands warm. No shivering, no fear in their eyes. Emma listened to the storm above them. She knew how bad it was. She knew what others were facing. She had faced it herself not long ago. And in that small, hidden space, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not pride, not victory, just certainty. The storm could take the valley. It could break chimneys. It could empty wood piles. It could freeze walls and floors and breath itself. But it would not take her children. Not this winter. And as the storm stretched into its second night, the difference between her choice and everyone else's was becoming impossible to ignore. By the third morning, the storm had taken almost everything it could. The wind slowed. The snow settled, and a heavy silence fell across the valley. Doors opened carefully. Men stepped out first, faces wrapped in cloth, eyes scanning the damage. Snow stood waist-deep in places. Fences had disappeared. Roofs sagged under the weight. But it was not the land that worried them most. It was what the storm had taken from inside their homes. Wood piles were gone. Furniture burned down to ash. Faces pale from nights without sleep. Children quiet in a way no child should be. In one home, a mother rubbed warmth back into her son's fingers, whispering softly as he cried. In another, a man stood staring at the empty corner where his table once stood, now nothing more than charred wood. Across the valley, the same truth settled in. They had survived, but barely. And then, someone noticed something that did not fit. Emma Herrian's chimney. It had barely smoked. Not like the others. Not during the storm. Joseph Kerna was the first to act on it. His boots pushed deep into the snow as he made his way across the valley, each step heavy with exhaustion. His family had burned nearly everything. 3 weeks of wood gone in 3 days. His youngest child's fingers still wrapped in cloth from frostbite. He did not come with pride. He came with a question. He found Emma in the barn. Calm. Working. As if the storm had passed over her without leaving a mark. I need to ask you something, he said, voice low. Emma set her pitchfork aside and looked at him. Go ahead. He hesitated, just for a moment, then spoke the truth. We burned everything, and it was still not enough. There was no judgment in Emma's face, only understanding. She gave a small nod toward the corner of the barn. You want to see where we slept? She moved the sacks aside, lifted the hidden trap door, and warm air rose up to meet him. Joseph stopped where he stood, not because it was hot, but because it was not cold. He followed her down the ladder, step by step, into something that felt impossible. The room was quiet, still, dry. The kind of stillness that did not fight the cold, but refused to let it in. He pulled a small thermometer from his coat, held it steady, waited, then looked again. 58 degrees, and the fire had gone out the night before. Joseph walked slowly around the space, touched the stone walls. They were warm. Not burning, not sharp, just steady. Like they had been holding that heat for hours. How? He asked, almost under his breath. Emma did not speak like a teacher. She spoke like someone who had lived it. The earth holds a steady temperature, she said. The stone keeps the heat. The animals above, they give warmth too. It all adds up. Joseph looked up at the ceiling, then back at the walls, then at the small stove. He thought about his home, the fire that never stopped, the wood that vanished, the cold that never left. And for the first time since the storm began, he understood what he had been missing. He climbed back up slowly, not rushing, not speaking, just thinking. At the top, he turned back to Emma. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. Emma shook her head. You don't owe me anything. He hesitated again, then said what mattered most. Can I bring my wife here to see this? Quote, Emma gave a simple answer. Bring anyone who needs it. And just like that, everything began to change. They came one by one at first. Curious. Careful. Some still doubtful. Then more followed. Families who had spent 3 nights fighting the cold, now standing inside a space that felt calm, steady, safe. They saw the difference. They felt it. And no one laughed anymore. The numbers spoke for themselves. Where others burned 30 or 40 logs a day, Emma used 10. Where cabins barely reached a livable warmth, her small room stayed steady through the night. No one could argue with that. Not after what they had just endured. Even the carpenter returned. The same man who had warned her. The same man who had shaken his head. He stepped down into the room again. This time, he stayed longer. Studied everything. The beams. The stone. The airflow. When he came back up, a small crowd had gathered. Waiting. Watching. He looked at them. Then said only 6 words. I was wrong, she was right. There was no applause. No celebration. Just quiet understanding. Because on the frontier, being right did not matter. Being warm did. By spring, the sound of digging could be heard across the valley. Shovels cutting into earth. Stone being moved. Ideas taking shape. One family built beneath their barn. Another beneath a storage shed. Some made small rooms. Others went deeper. Different shapes. Different sizes. But the same idea. The same truth. Use the earth. Hold the heat. Stop fighting the cold the wrong way. Emma never claimed anything. Never taught lessons. Never asked for credit. When people thanked her, she gave the same simple answer. I was cold, and this made us less cold. Years passed. Winters came and went. And what once seemed strange became normal. Her daughters grew strong, healthy. They slept through winters that once would have broken them. Emma stayed on that land. Working. Living. Returning each winter to the same quiet space beneath the barn. She did not build it to be remembered. She built it to survive. And in the end, that was enough. Because real wisdom does not ask for attention. It does not argue. It does not try to prove itself. It simply works. Emma Herrian understood something most people did not. That survival is not about doing what looks right. It is about doing what keeps you alive. And sometimes, that means digging beneath everything others believe in, until you find something that finally works. If this story meant something to you, take a moment and let it stay with you. And if you believe quiet strength like this still matters, consider subscribing, because there are more stories like this. Stories that remind us what people are capable of, when giving up is not an option.